My daughter-in-law accidentally sent my son's lunchbox to my office. I showed it to a colleague as a joke. He immediately went pale and told me to take my son to the hospital right now. "Why?" I asked. "I can't explain it to you now. It's something terrible. Do as I say or your son won't survive." What I discovered at the hospital chilled me to the bone. On a Monday morning at my house in Chicago, things were as busy as ever. The sound of pots clanging in the kitchen, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, and the light scent of perfume samples I'd left on the dining table all blended together in the familiar chaos of morning. I was rushing around getting ready for the office, preparing to oversee the new fragrance production line at my company. It was the pride and joy of my life, this business I'd built from nothing over 25 years. My son Cameron was already dressed in a crisp navy suit, preparing for an important meeting at the investment firm where he worked as a senior analyst. Watching my boy adjust his tie in front of the hallway mirror filled me with pride. Cameron was everything to me, my only child, the person I had dedicated my entire life to raising and loving. After his father passed away 8 years ago, it had been just the two of us against the world until Nadia came into our lives. In the kitchen, Nadia, my daughter-in-law, was busy preparing our lunches. She'd been up since early morning, her long dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. As she stirred something on the stove, she chatted on the phone with her friends, her voice a cheerful stream of laughter and gossip. But her hands moved with practiced efficiency, packing food into 2 containers, a large one for Cameron and a smaller one for me. I stood in the doorway watching her, feeling that warm sensation in my chest that came from seeing my family taken care of. "What a thoughtful girl you are, my dear," I said, unable to hide my smile. "You don't just take care of your husband, you take care of your mother-in-law too." Nadia turned around, her dark eyes sparkling, and she smiled softly. "I just want everyone to eat well, Miss Maxine. Eating out isn't safe anymore. You never know what they put in restaurant food." Her words touched me deeply. I had always seen Nadia as the daughter I never had, this beautiful young woman who had brought joy back into Cameron's life after a difficult breakup years ago. She always knew how to take care of the family, always so attentive to both of us. As we were getting ready to leave, Nadia rushed to hand me the small container while putting the large one in Cameron's messenger bag. I carefully placed mine in my designer tote, thinking about how incredibly thoughtful she was. Nadia understood what family meant. She made me feel at ease, made me believe that my son would be well cared for, even when I wasn't around. I walked out the door of our Lincoln Park townhouse, heading toward my waiting car, not realizing that this lunchbox would change everything in my life. At lunchtime, my office in the River North District was as lively as usual. The younger employees gathered around the break room table, laughing and sharing stories about their weekends. The energy was infectious, the kind of warm atmosphere I'd always tried to cultivate in my company. I opened my bag and pulled out the container, but immediately noticed something was wrong. This wasn't the small container Nadia had prepared for me. It was the large one, Cameron's container. The one meant for my son. I laughed and shook my head, finding the mix-up endearing. Nadia is more scatterbrained than her old mother-in-law, I thought, believing it was just a cute mistake, the kind that happens in busy morning routines. When I opened the lid, I noticed something strange on the rim of the container. Small white crystals, like sugar, dotted the edge. "How odd," I muttered, both curious and amused. "A savory dish with sugar on the rim?" The employees nearby crowded around, always eager to see what I'd brought for lunch. One of them, a young marketing assistant named Jessica, laughed and pointed. "Mrs. Robinson, the rim of your container looks like a frosted margarita glass." The whole office burst into laughter. The atmosphere felt light and cheerful, like a small party. Everyone was joking about Nadia's cooking creativity, suggesting maybe she was trying some new culinary trend she'd seen on social media. I picked up the container and took it to David, my closest colleague and trusted friend. He had been a doctor before retiring and now worked as a workplace safety consultant for my fragrance company. David was the person I trusted most at work, the one I shared all the little stories of my life with, both professional and personal. "Look at this," I said, laughing as I showed him the container. "Nadia is so young, but she's already more absent-minded than me. She cooked a savory dish for Cameron and put sugar on the rim of the container. Maybe she thinks he works so hard that he needs to gain weight." I joked, expecting David to laugh along with everyone else. We'd shared so many lighthearted moments like this over the years. But David didn't laugh. He took the container from my hands, his expression shifting from casual interest to intense focus. He tilted it under the fluorescent office light, examining the rim carefully. Then he gently rubbed one of the white crystals between his fingers, bringing it close to his nose. Suddenly, his face went completely pale. His eyes widened with something I'd never seen in him before: fear. "Who prepared this meal?" he asked in a serious, low voice that cut through all the laughter in the room. I frowned, a little confused by the sudden change in David's demeanor. The laughter around us had died down. Everyone sensed something was wrong. "My daughter-in-law, as usual," I answered, trying to keep my voice light. "She prepares lunch for Cameron and me every morning. Today she accidentally gave me Cameron's container instead of mine." "Why? What's wrong?" I tried to remain calm, but a terrible premonition was beginning to creep over me like cold fingers wrapping around my heart. David didn't answer right away. He looked at me with eyes full of concern, and then suddenly said in a loud, urgent tone that startled everyone in the break room, "You need to take your son to the hospital right now." His words were like a direct stab to my chest. I froze, feeling the blood in my veins turn to ice. The chatter in the office abruptly stopped. A deathly silence fell over everything. The young employees looked at each other, bewildered, not understanding what was happening. My hands started trembling. I tried to keep my composure and asked again, my voice barely steady, "Why? Explain to me, David. What's going on? You're scaring me." But he just shook his head, his jaw tight. His voice trembled when he spoke. "I can't explain it to you now, Maxine. It's something terrible. Do what I say, or your son won't survive." The words hit me like a physical blow. Cameron, my son. The boy I had protected my entire life, the man I loved more than my own existence, was in danger. I didn't understand it. I didn't want to believe it. But the gravity in David's voice, the fear in his eyes, stopped me from doubting. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice breaking despite my efforts to control it. "David, this isn't a joke, is it? Please tell me this is some kind of mistake." David took my hand, squeezing it firmly. His eyes were red-rimmed, emotional in a way I'd rarely seen from this composed man. "I swear to you, Maxine, I would never joke about something like this. Those white crystals are not sugar. You have to act now. Every minute counts." His words were like an alarm bell that woke up all my senses. I didn't know exactly what was happening, but my mother's instinct told me that something was very, very wrong. The container sat there on the break room table, innocent-looking but now transformed into something sinister, a silent warning. I looked at it, then at David, and for a moment, I felt like the whole world was collapsing beneath my feet. David practically pushed me toward the door, his urgency cutting through my shock. "Go now. You can't waste a single second." He already had his phone in hand, dialing a contact with shaking fingers. I could hear him talking as I stumbled toward my office to grab my purse. "I need you to analyze a sample immediately. It's a matter of life or death. University of Chicago Medical Center, Toxicology Department. I'm sending someone over right now." I stood there in my office doorway, clutching the container that I'd now placed in a plastic bag, my mind in complete chaos. Just minutes ago, I'd been joking about these white crystals, laughing with my employees about Nadia's absent-mindedness. And now that container felt like a bomb that could destroy my entire world. I'm going right now, I told David, forcing my voice to sound harder than I felt, trying to hide the terror growing inside me like a living thing. He nodded, his expression grim. I'll meet you at the hospital. Don't let anyone touch that container. Don't touch the crystals yourself. It's evidence. Evidence. The word sent another chill through me. I called my driver, Mr. Jones, who had worked for my family for over 18 years. When I told him to drive straight to the University of Chicago Medical Center, he looked at me through the rearview mirror with concern. Is everything all right, Mrs. Robinson? Just drive fast, Jones, I said, my voice hoarse. Please, as fast as you can. During the ride from River North to Hyde Park, I sat in the back seat, clutching the plastic bag, my gaze fixed on the window but seeing nothing. The streets of Chicago were as bustling as ever. The L train rumbling overhead, people hurrying along Michigan Avenue, the bright autumn sun reflecting off the glass skyscrapers. But everything seemed far away, as if I were watching it through thick glass. I was in another world, one where there was only me and the terror of what was about to happen. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and called Cameron's office. His assistant answered, her voice bright and professional. Robinson Investments, this is Ashley speaking. Ashley, this is Maxine Robinson, Cameron's mother. I need to speak with him immediately. It's an emergency. Oh, Mrs. Robinson, I'm so sorry, but Mr. Robinson is in a client meeting right now. He specifically asked not to be disturbed unless it was absolutely critical. This is critical, I said, my voice sharp with panic. Get him on the phone now. There was a pause, and then I heard her say, Yes, ma'am, right away. Moments later, Cameron's voice came through, concerned but professional. Mom? What's wrong? Are you okay? Cameron, I said, and my voice broke despite my best efforts. Baby, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Don't eat anything Nadia packed for your lunch today. Do you understand me? Don't eat a single bite. What? Mom? What are you talking about? I can't explain right now, but I'm on my way to the University of Chicago Medical Center. I need you to meet me there as soon as possible. Drop everything and come now. Mom, you're scaring me. What's happening? Please, Cameron, just trust me. Come to the hospital right now. I hung up before he could ask more questions, before I had to try to explain something I didn't fully understand myself. When we arrived at the University of Chicago Medical Center, I practically jumped out of the car before Mr. Jones had fully stopped. I rushed through the main entrance, still clutching that plastic bag like it held the answers to questions I was terrified to ask. The reception area was busy with the usual chaos of a major hospital. Patients checking in, families waiting anxiously, medical staff moving purposefully through the corridors. The smell of antiseptic and floor cleaner filled my nostrils. I walked up to the young nurse at the reception desk. She had thick-rimmed glasses and looked up at me with professional courtesy. I need someone in toxicology to analyze a container of food, I said, my words tumbling out quickly. There's something dangerous in it. My colleague, David, he called ahead. He's a doctor. She blinked at me, confusion crossing her face. But then the phone on her desk rang. She answered it, listened for a moment, and her expression changed to one of understanding mixed with concern. Mrs. Robinson? She asked. Yes, that's me. Dr. Mitchell from toxicology is expecting you. 3rd floor, East Wing. I'll have someone escort you up. A young orderly appeared and led me through a maze of corridors to an elevator. We rode up in silence, and I watched the floor numbers light up, feeling like each one took an eternity. 3rd floor. The doors opened. The toxicology department was quieter than the main hospital floors, more clinical, more focused. The orderly pointed me toward a door marked Dr. Mitchell, toxicology. I knocked, and a voice called out, "Come in." Dr. Mitchell was a man in his late 50s with graying hair and sharp, intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He stood up from his desk as I entered, his expression already serious. "Mrs. Robinson, I understand you have a sample that needs urgent analysis." "Yes," I said, setting the plastic bag on his desk. "My colleague David said these white crystals on the rim of the container might be dangerous, that my son might be in danger." Dr. Mitchell carefully extracted the container from the bag using gloves. He examined the rim under a bright desk lamp, then used a small tool to collect some of the crystals into a sterile vial. "I'm going to run a preliminary test right now," he said. "It will take about 15 minutes. Please have a seat." Those were the longest 15 minutes of my life. I sat in the chair across from his desk, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles were white. I watched him work with various instruments and solutions, his movements precise and methodical. Dr. Mitchell's expression grew darker with each passing minute. Finally, he turned to face me, and I could see the answer in his eyes before he even spoke. "Mrs. Robinson, I need to ask you some very important questions. Has your son been experiencing any unusual symptoms recently? Fatigue, nausea, stomach pain, weakness?" My mind raced back over the past few months. Cameron had mentioned feeling tired more often. He'd complained about his stomach bothering him. I'd chalked it up to work stress, long hours at the office, the pressure of managing high-stakes investments. "Yes," I whispered, "he's been tired." He said his stomach was bothering him for the past few months. We thought it was stress from work. Dr. Mitchell's jaw tightened. "Mrs. Robinson, those white crystals are arsenic trioxide. It's a highly toxic substance. If your son has been consuming food with this in it regularly, he's been subjected to chronic arsenic poisoning." The room spun. I gripped the arms of the chair to keep from falling. "Arsenic? Are you telling me someone has been poisoning my son?" "I'm telling you that these crystals on this container are definitely arsenic, and if your son has been experiencing those symptoms for months, then yes, someone has been systematically poisoning him." "Oh God," I breathed. "Nadia. My daughter-in-law prepares his lunch every single day. She's been doing it for over a year." Dr. Mitchell's expression was grave. "Your son needs to be brought in immediately for testing. We need to run blood work and possibly hair analysis to determine the extent of the poisoning. Arsenic accumulates in the body, and chronic exposure can cause serious organ damage." As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. David entered, his face flushed from rushing. Behind him was Cameron, looking confused and frightened. "Mom, what's going on?" Cameron asked, coming straight to me. "You sounded terrified on the phone." I stood up and grabbed his hands, looking into his eyes, those eyes that were so much like his father's. "Baby, I need you to listen to Dr. Mitchell. Something terrible has been happening to you, and we didn't know." Dr. Mitchell explained everything to Cameron, showing him the test results, explaining about the arsenic, the symptoms, the danger he'd been in. I watched my son's face go from confusion to disbelief to horror as the truth sank in. "Nadia?" he said finally, his voice barely a whisper. "You're saying Nadia has been poisoning me?" "The evidence strongly suggests that someone has been putting arsenic in your food," Dr. Mitchell said carefully. "Your mother tells me your wife prepares your lunch daily, and this container came from your house today." Cameron sank into a chair, his face ashen. "I don't understand. Why would she do this? We're married. She's my wife." "That's a question for the police," David said quietly. "But right now, we need to focus on your health. You need to be tested immediately." Dr. Mitchell called for a nurse, who came in and began the process of drawing Cameron's blood. Multiple vials were filled, each one labeled carefully. The nurse also collected hair samples, explaining that hair analysis could show the timeline of arsenic exposure. "We'll have preliminary results within a few hours," Dr. Mitchell said. "But based on the symptoms you've described and the presence of arsenic in the food container, I'm confident we're dealing with chronic arsenic poisoning." I held Cameron's hand as the samples were taken, feeling his fingers trembling in mine. My strong, successful son, reduced to this terrified, vulnerable state. And the person who had done this to him was someone we'd welcomed into our family, someone I'd treated like a daughter. "Mom," Cameron said, his voice breaking, "how could she do this? I loved her. I gave her everything." "I don't know, baby," I said, tears streaming down my face. "But we're going to find out, and we're going to make sure she never hurts you again." David had his phone out, already dialing. "I'm calling the police. This is attempted murder. They need to be involved immediately." As David spoke to the police dispatcher, explaining the situation, I looked at my son. He was 35 years old, successful, intelligent, and someone had been slowly killing him for months. How had I not seen it? How had I missed the signs? "Mrs. Robinson," Dr. Mitchell said gently, "you saved your son's life today." If you hadn't noticed that container was wrong, if David hadn't recognized what those crystals were, Cameron might have continued eating poisoned food until it was too late. Chronic arsenic poisoning is fatal if left untreated. "How long does he have?" I asked, needing to know the worst. "If she's been doing this for months, how much damage has been done?" "We'll know more when the test results come back. But the good news is that once exposure stops and treatment begins, most patients recover. The human body is remarkably resilient. However, we need to start treatment immediately." Within 30 minutes, 2 detectives from the Chicago Police Department arrived at the hospital. Detective Sarah Chen and Detective Marcus Hayes, both from the Special Investigations Unit. They were professional, efficient, and their presence made everything feel horribly real. Detective Chen was a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Detective Hayes was older, maybe mid-50s, with the weathered look of someone who'd seen too much human darkness. They took our statements in a private consultation room that Dr. Mitchell had arranged for us. Cameron sat beside me, still looking shell-shocked. David remained as well, since he'd been the one to first identify the arsenic. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Detective Chen said, her pen poised over her notebook. "Mrs. Robinson, you received a lunch container this morning that was meant for your son. When you opened it at work, you noticed white crystals on the rim. Your colleague David, who has medical training, identified these crystals as potentially dangerous and advised immediate medical attention." "That's correct," I said. "And Mr. Robinson, your wife Nadia prepares your lunch every workday morning?" Cameron nodded, his voice hoarse. "Every morning for the past 14 months, ever since we got married." 14 months. The number hit me like a punch. She'd been poisoning him for over a year. "Has anyone else had access to your food?" Detective Hayes asked. "Anyone who might have had opportunity to contaminate the containers?" "No," Cameron said. "Nadia prepares everything in our kitchen early in the morning. She packs it in containers and gives it to me before I leave for work. My mother gets hers at the same time." "And Mrs. Robinson, have you experienced any similar symptoms to your son?" Detective Chen asked. I thought about it carefully. "No, I've been perfectly healthy. But Nadia always prepares different portions. Mine is always smaller, in a different container, which suggests she knew exactly which container had the poison," Detective Hayes said grimly. "This wasn't random. This was targeted." Dr. Mitchell entered the room with a folder. His expression was grave. "The preliminary blood work is back. Cameron, your arsenic levels are significantly elevated. You have approximately 180 micrograms per liter in your blood. Normal levels are below 10. Cameron closed his eyes. I squeezed his hand tighter. "What does that mean for his prognosis?" I asked. "It means he's been exposed to arsenic regularly over an extended period. The good news is we've caught it before permanent organ damage has occurred, but he needs to start chelation therapy immediately. That's a treatment that will help remove the heavy metals from his body." "How long will treatment take?" Cameron asked. "Several weeks, possibly months. We'll monitor your levels regularly. But Cameron, you need to understand something important. If this had continued for another few months, the damage could have been irreversible. You might not have survived. The words hung in the air like a death sentence barely avoided. Detective Chen stood up. "We need to move quickly." "Mr. Robinson, I need you to think very carefully. Has your wife given any indication that she might be planning to leave? Has she been acting differently lately?" Cameron thought for a moment. "She's been more anxious recently, asking a lot of questions about my mother's business, about our finances. She wanted to know about my life insurance policy, about what would happen if something happened to me." "Life insurance," Detective Hayes repeated, exchanging a look with his partner. "How much?" $2 million. My mother is listed as the primary beneficiary, but my wife is secondary. If something happened to both of us, the money would go to Nadia." The puzzle pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. Nadia hadn't just been trying to kill Cameron. She'd been planning to kill both of us to inherit everything. "We need to bring her in for questioning immediately," Detective Chen said, "but we need to be strategic about this. If she suspects we're onto her, she might destroy evidence or flee." "I have an idea," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Nadia doesn't know that we know. She thinks Cameron ate his lunch as usual. Let me call her. Act normal. Tell her Cameron isn't feeling well and ask her to bring him some things from home. When she arrives at the hospital, you can arrest her here." Detective Hayes nodded slowly. "That could work. It gives us control of the environment and ensures she doesn't have time to dispose of evidence." "Mom, I don't know if I can face her," Cameron said, his voice breaking. "The woman I married, the woman I loved, has been trying to kill me for over a year." "You don't have to face her alone, baby. I'll be right there with you. We all will be." Detective Chen stepped out to coordinate with her team. When she returned, she nodded at me. "Make the call. Act as natural as possible. Tell her Cameron is feeling ill and needs some personal items from home. We'll have officers positioned to make the arrest when she arrives." I pulled out my phone, my hand trembling slightly as I dialed Nadia's number. It rang 3 times before she answered, her voice bright and cheerful. "Hi, Miss Maxine. How was lunch? I tried a new recipe today." The casualness of her voice, knowing what I now knew, made my stomach turn, but I forced myself to sound normal, even warm. "Nadia, sweetheart, I need you to do something for me. Cameron isn't feeling well. We're at the University of Chicago Medical Center. He needs some things from home. Can you bring his overnight bag and some comfortable clothes?" There was a pause. "What's wrong with him? Is it serious?" "The doctor thinks it might be food poisoning or a stomach bug. They want to keep him overnight for observation. Nothing too serious, but he needs his things." "Of course, I'll come right away. Give me 30 minutes. "Thank you, dear. We're in the 3rd floor consultation wing. Ask for Dr. Mitchell's office." I hung up and looked at the detectives. "She's coming." "Good," Detective Hayes said. "Now we wait." Those 30 minutes felt like hours. Cameron was moved to a private room where his chelation therapy could begin. Nurses came and went, setting up IV lines, monitoring his vitals. I stayed by his bedside, holding his hand. David sat in the corner, quietly supportive. He'd been a rock through all of this, and I made a mental note to thank him properly once this nightmare was over. "Mom," Cameron said softly, "did you ever suspect anything? Was there ever a moment when you thought something was off about Nadia?" I thought back over the past 14 months. Nadia had been attentive, loving, the perfect daughter-in-law and wife. But now, looking back with new eyes, I could see small things. The way she always insisted on preparing the food herself. How she never let anyone else in the kitchen when she was cooking. The questions about our finances that had seemed like natural interest, but now felt calculating. "I thought she was perfect," I admitted. "I was so happy you'd found someone who seemed to love you so much." I was blind to the truth. "We both were," Cameron said. A nurse knocked softly on the door. "Mrs. Robinson?" Detective Chen asked me to tell you that your daughter-in-law has arrived in the building. They're ready. My heart began pounding. This was it. The moment when Nadia would learn that her carefully constructed plan had fallen apart. Stay here, I told Cameron. I'll handle this. But he shook his head. No. I need to see her face when they arrest her. I need to know why. We walked down the hallway together, Cameron still in his hospital gown with an IV pole beside him, me holding his arm for support. David followed quietly behind us. We reached a consultation room where Detective Chen had set up what she called a controlled confrontation. Through a two-way mirror, I could see Nadia sitting in the adjoining room. She looked perfectly composed, her hair neat, her makeup flawless. She was checking her phone, seemingly unconcerned. The overnight bag she'd brought sat on the table in front of her. We're going to bring her into this room, Detective Chen explained quietly. We want to gauge her reaction when she sees Cameron is alert and being treated. Often, in cases like this, the perpetrator will reveal something in that initial moment of surprise. What do you want us to do? I asked. Just be yourselves. Let her talk. People often confess more than they realize when they're trying to explain themselves. Detective Hayes went to get Nadia. Through the glass, I watched her look up with a smile as he opened the door. Mrs. Robinson, your husband and mother-in-law are ready to see you. She stood, picking up the bag, and followed him out. Moments later, the door to our room opened, and Nadia walked in. Her smile faltered when she saw Cameron hooked up to an IV, saw the medical equipment, saw the detectives standing in the corners of the room. Her eyes darted from face to face, and I saw something flicker across her expression. Fear? Calculation? Cameron, baby, what's going on? She asked, moving toward him. They said food poisoning, but this looks serious. Detective Chen stepped forward, blocking her path. Mrs. Robinson, I'm Detective Chen with the Chicago Police Department. We need to ask you some questions about the lunch you prepared for your husband this morning. Nadia's eyes widened. Questions? I don't understand. What's this about? The lunch you prepared this morning contained arsenic trioxide, Detective Chen said bluntly. Your husband has been diagnosed with chronic arsenic poisoning. Can you explain how arsenic got into his food? The color drained from Nadia's face. Her mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound came out. Her hands trembled, and she gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. That's impossible, she finally whispered. There must be some mistake. I would never hurt Cameron. I love him. The tests don't lie, Detective Hayes said. We have the contaminated food container. We have your husband's blood work showing elevated arsenic levels. We have evidence of chronic poisoning over an extended period. The only person with regular access to his food is you. No, 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 Nadia said, her voice rising with panic. This is crazy. I didn't do anything. Maybe something at work? Or the restaurant where we had dinner last week? Nadia, Cameron said, his voice cold in a way I'd never heard before. Stop lying. The doctors say I've been poisoned for months, over a year. You're the only one who prepares my lunch every single day. You're the only one with the opportunity. She turned to him, tears streaming down her face now. Cameron, please. You have to believe me. I would never hurt you. We're married. We're supposed to build a life together. A life built on what? I asked, my voice sharp. On my son's death? On inheriting his life insurance? On taking everything we've worked for? Nadia's head snapped toward me. For just a moment, I saw something in her eyes, something cold and calculating beneath the tears. But then it was gone, replaced by wounded innocence. Miss Maxine, how could you say that? I've been nothing but good to this family. I've taken care of both of you, cooked for you, respected you. You respected us so much you tried to kill us? The words burst out of me. Because that's what this was, wasn't it? Kill Cameron first, then me. Inherit everything. The life insurance, my business, all of it. I want a lawyer, Nadia said suddenly, her voice going flat. I'm not saying anything else without a lawyer. Detective Chen nodded as if she'd expected this. That's your right. But I'm placing you under arrest for attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As the detective continued reading Nadia her rights, I watched my daughter-in-law's face transform. The tears stopped. The fear disappeared. What remained was a cold, hard expression that I'd never seen before. This was the real Nadia, the one she'd been hiding for 14 months. You'll never prove it, she said quietly, looking directly at Cameron. Everyone knows how stressed you've been at work, how many energy drinks you consume, how little you sleep. Any good lawyer will create reasonable doubt. We have the container with your fingerprints and arsenic residue, Detective Hayes said. We have your husband's medical records showing a clear pattern of poisoning. We have motive, means, and opportunity. And we have something else, I said, an idea forming in my mind. Nadia, before you're taken away, I want to tell you something. I've decided to donate my entire estate to charity. Every penny. The business, the properties, the investments. All of it will go to various foundations. There will be nothing left for anyone to inherit. It was a lie, but I wanted to see her reaction, and I got it. Nadia's mask slipped completely. Rage flashed across her face, raw and undisguised. You can't do that. That money should go to family. Cameron worked hard for his position in that family. I worked hard to be the perfect wife. We earned it. There it is, Detective Chen said quietly. The real motive. Nadia seemed to realize what she'd revealed. She pressed her lips together tightly, but the damage was done. In that moment of anger, she'd shown exactly why she'd been poisoning Cameron. Take her to holding, Detective Chen instructed the uniformed officers who'd been waiting outside. As they moved to handcuff Nadia, she looked at Cameron one last time. I did love you once, she said, but love doesn't pay the bills. Love doesn't buy security. Your family had everything, and I had nothing. I wasn't going to spend my life waiting for handouts. I would have given you anything, Cameron said, his voice breaking. All you had to do was ask. You didn't have to kill me for it. Asking means depending on someone else's generosity, Nadia said coldly. Taking means it's yours. I wasn't going to beg. They led her away, her heels clicking against the linoleum floor. I watched through the window as they took her down the hallway. This woman I'd welcomed into my family, this woman who'd smiled at my table while plotting murder. Cameron collapsed back into a chair, his face in his hands. I knelt beside him, wrapping my arms around my son as he finally let himself cry. All the fear, the betrayal, the shock of learning that the person he loved most had been trying to kill him, it all poured out. I've got you, baby, I whispered, holding him tight. I've got you, and you're safe now. She can never hurt you again. David stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Cameron's shoulder. You're going to get through this. The treatment will work. Your body will heal, and eventually, your heart will heal too. The next few days were a blur of medical treatments, police interviews, and legal procedures. Cameron remained in the hospital while his chelation therapy continued. I stayed with him, sleeping in the chair beside his bed, refusing to leave his side for more than a few minutes at a time. Dr. Mitchell visited daily, monitoring Cameron's progress. The arsenic levels in his blood were slowly declining, which was encouraging, but the psychological damage was harder to measure. How's he doing emotionally? Dr. Mitchell asked me on the third day, when Cameron was sleeping. He's devastated, I said quietly. He trusted her completely. He loved her, and she was slowly killing him every single day while smiling in his face. That kind of betrayal takes time to process. I'd recommend he see a therapist once he's physically recovered. This is trauma, pure and simple. On the fourth day, Detective Chen came to the hospital with news. We searched your home. We found arsenic trioxide hidden in a false bottom of Nadia's jewelry box. We also found her laptop, and the search history is damning. She researched arsenic poisoning extensively, how to administer it without detection, what symptoms to expect, how long it would take to be fatal. She planned this carefully, I said, feeling sick. Very carefully. We also found evidence that she'd been in contact with life insurance companies, inquiring about the payout process. She was already planning what she'd do with the money after Cameron died. Cameron was awake now, listening to this. His face had lost the shock of the first days and hardened into something else. Anger, maybe, or grim determination. "What happens now?" he asked. "The state attorney's office is building their case. With the physical evidence, your medical records, and her own statements, they're confident they can get a conviction for attempted murder. She's being held without bail because she's considered a flight risk and a danger to others." "Good," Cameron said simply. Detective Chen pulled out her phone and showed us a photo. "We also found this in her things. Does this mean anything to you?" It was a photograph, old and faded, of a rundown house. Written on the back in Nadia's handwriting were the words, "Never going back." "She mentioned growing up in poverty," I said. "On the day of her arrest, she said she had nothing, and we had everything." "We've been looking into her background," Detective Chen said. "She grew up in poverty, that part is true. But she also has a criminal record under a different name: identity theft, fraud. She served 2 years in a minimum security facility in Indiana before moving to Chicago and changing her identity." Cameron's eyes widened. "She lied about everything? Even her name?" "Her real name is Natasha Coleman. Nadia Robinson was a completely constructed identity. She targeted you, Cameron. She researched your family, found out about your mother's successful business, learned about your position at the investment firm. This wasn't random. This was calculated from the very beginning." The betrayal cut even deeper with this revelation. Their entire relationship had been a lie. Every moment, every word of love, every promise had been part of a long con designed to end with his death and her enrichment. "I need some air," Cameron said abruptly. "I need to get out of this room." Dr. Mitchell had approved short walks with the IV pole, so I helped Cameron up, and we walked slowly down the hallway. We found a small waiting area, with windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the city. "Mom," Cameron said after a long silence, "how did I not see it? How did I fall in love with someone who was planning to murder me the whole time?" "Because she was good at deception, baby. This is what she does. She's done it before. You can't blame yourself for being fooled by a professional con artist. But I'm supposed to be smart. I analyze investments for a living. I assess risk. How did I miss every red flag?" "Love makes us blind sometimes," I said gently. "You saw what you wanted to see. What she wanted you to see. That's not a weakness, Cameron. That's being human." We stood there together, looking out at the city. I thought about all the times Nadia had sat at my table, laughed at my jokes, called me Mom. How had I missed it too? The signs must have been there, but I'd been so happy that Cameron had found someone, so relieved that he wouldn't be alone. "What about you?" Cameron asked, reading my mind. "You're blaming yourself too, aren't you? I welcomed her into our family. I trusted her with my son's life, and she used that trust to try to kill you. She fooled both of us, Mom. She would have fooled anyone." Over the next week, Cameron grew stronger physically. The arsenic levels continued to drop. His energy returned. The stomach pains that had plagued him for months disappeared. But emotionally, he was struggling. I called in every favor I had, hiring the best therapist in Chicago who specialized in trauma and betrayal. Dr. Sarah Goldman met with Cameron daily, helping him process what had happened. "It's going to take time," she told me, after one of their sessions. "He's dealing with multiple layers of trauma. The physical poisoning, the emotional betrayal, the discovery that his entire marriage was based on lies. But he's resilient. With proper support, he'll heal. Meanwhile, the legal case against Nadia was moving forward rapidly. The evidence was overwhelming. Her public defender tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the state attorney's office refused. They wanted this to go to trial. They wanted the full story on record. On Cameron's 10th day in the hospital, I made a decision. I called a meeting with my company's board of directors and announced something I'd been thinking about since this nightmare began. I'm establishing the Robinson Foundation, I told them. Its mission will be to help victims of domestic violence and financial abuse. We'll provide legal services, counseling, and emergency financial support for people trying to escape dangerous situations. What had started as a lie I told Nadia to gauge her reaction was now becoming reality. I wanted to turn this pain into something positive, something that could help others who might be facing similar situations. The board was supportive, even enthusiastic. We set aside a significant portion of the company's annual profits for the foundation. It would be my legacy, Cameron's legacy, something good born from something terrible. When I told Cameron about the foundation, he smiled for the first time in days. "Dad would have loved this," he said. He always said that the measure of a person is how they respond to adversity. "Your father was a wise man." "I want to be involved," Cameron said. "Once I'm better, I want to help run the foundation. I want my experience to mean something. If my story can help even one person recognize the warning signs and get out before it's too late, then maybe some good will have come from all of this." 2 weeks after his admission, Dr. Mitchell declared Cameron well enough to be discharged. His arsenic levels were nearly back to normal. The organ function tests showed no permanent damage. Physically, he was healing. Emotionally, he had a long way to go, but he was on the path. As I helped him pack his things, Detective Chen called with news. "The trial date has been set. 3 months from now. The state attorney wants both of you to testify. Are you prepared for that?" "Yes," Cameron said firmly. "I want to face her in court. I want everyone to know what she did." "It won't be easy," Detective Chen warned. "Her defense attorney will try to paint you as unreliable. We'll suggest other causes for the poisoning. We'll try to create doubt. It's going to be difficult." "I don't care," Cameron said. "She tried to kill me. She tried to kill my mother. She needs to be held accountable." The 3 months leading up to the trial were both healing and difficult. Cameron moved back into my house rather than returning to the home he'd shared with Nadia. He couldn't face going back to that place where she'd prepared poisoned meals while pretending to be a loving wife. We established a new routine together. Morning coffee on the porch. Breakfast that I prepared myself, though Cameron insisted on learning to cook too. He threw himself into therapy sessions with Dr. Goldman, and slowly, day by day, I watched my son begin to reclaim himself. The Robinson Foundation launched officially 6 weeks after Cameron's discharge from the hospital. The response from the community was overwhelming. Donations poured in. Women reached out sharing their own stories of abuse, of manipulation, of partners who'd tried to control or harm them. "There are so many people suffering in silence," Cameron said one evening as we reviewed foundation applications. "So many people who don't know where to turn." "That's why this matters," I told him. "That's why your story matters." The media had gotten wind of the case, and it became a sensation in Chicago. "Socialite accused of poisoning husband for inheritance," the headlines screamed. Reporters camped outside my office and my home. I refused all interview requests, but the speculation ran wild. Some of it was accurate, much of it wasn't, but I didn't care about public opinion. I only cared about justice. As the trial date approached, the state attorney's office prepared us extensively. We met with prosecutors multiple times, going over every detail of what we would say on the stand. Her defense is going to argue that Cameron's symptoms could have been caused by stress, by energy drinks, by environmental exposure at work, Assistant State Attorney Jennifer Martinez explained. They'll try to suggest the arsenic in the lunchbox was a one-time contamination, not part of a pattern. Your testimony needs to be clear, consistent, and unshakable. I understand, Cameron said. The trial began on a cold November morning. The Cook County Courthouse was packed with spectators, journalists, and curiosity seekers. Cameron and I arrived together, flanked by security that Jennifer had insisted upon. Walking into that courtroom and seeing Nadia sitting at the defense table was surreal. She looked different than she had at our home. Her hair was pulled back severely. She wore a conservative gray suit. Her makeup was minimal. Her lawyers had clearly coached her on how to appear sympathetic. But when her eyes met mine across the courtroom, I saw no remorse, only cold calculation. The jury selection had taken 2 days. 12 people who would decide Nadia's fate. I studied their faces, wondering what they were thinking, whether they'd see through her act. Jennifer's opening statement was powerful and direct. She laid out the evidence methodically: the arsenic in the food container, Cameron's blood work showing elevated arsenic levels, the hair analysis proving chronic exposure, the research on Nadia's laptop, the hidden arsenic in her jewelry box, the false identity, the criminal history. This was not an accident, Jennifer told the jury. This was not a tragic mistake. This was cold, calculated, premeditated, attempted murder. Nadia Robinson, whose real name is Natasha Coleman, targeted Cameron Robinson because of his family's wealth. She married him with the intention of killing him and his mother to inherit their fortune. For 14 months, she poisoned his food while smiling in his face. She is only sitting in this courtroom today because her mother-in-law accidentally received the wrong lunch container that day. Without that accident, Cameron Robinson would be dead. The defense attorney, a man named Robert Harrison, presented a different narrative. He painted Nadia as a loving wife whose husband's health problems were caused by work stress and poor lifestyle choices. He suggested the arsenic in the lunchbox was a one-time contamination, possibly industrial exposure from Cameron's office building. The prosecution wants you to believe my client is some kind of monster, Harrison said. But where is the proof of intent? Where is the evidence of 14 months of poisoning? All they have is one contaminated container and a man who was under tremendous stress at work. Correlation is not causation. I wanted to scream. How could he stand there and defend someone who'd done what Nadia had done? But I stayed silent, watching, waiting for our turn to speak. The prosecution called their witnesses first. Dr. Mitchell testified about the arsenic levels in Cameron's blood and hair, explaining that the pattern was consistent with chronic exposure, not a one-time event. Arsenic accumulates in hair as it grows, he explained to the jury. By analyzing different segments of hair, we can create a timeline of exposure. Mr. Robinson's hair showed elevated arsenic levels going back over a year, with increasing concentrations over time. This is not consistent with a single exposure or environmental contamination. This is consistent with regular, intentional poisoning. The defense tried to shake his testimony, suggesting alternative explanations, but Dr. Mitchell was unflappable. The science was clear. David took the stand next, explaining how he'd identified the white crystals as arsenic, describing his medical background and why he'd been so certain it was dangerous. I've seen arsenic poisoning before, David said. In my years as a physician, I treated several cases. The symptoms Mr. Robinson described to me that day, combined with those crystals on the container, left no doubt in my mind. That's why I urged Mrs. Robinson to get her son to the hospital immediately. Detective Chen testified about the evidence found in the search of our home, the hidden arsenic, the laptop search history, the false identity. With each piece of evidence, I watched the jury's expressions grow more serious. Then it was time for Cameron to take the stand. I watched him walk to the witness box, place his hand on the Bible, and swear to tell the truth. My strong, brave son, about to relive the worst experience of his life. Jennifer approached Cameron with gentle professionalism. She knew this was difficult for him, and her demeanor showed respect for what he was about to share. "Mr. Robinson, can you describe your relationship with the defendant before you discovered she was poisoning you?" Cameron took a breath, his voice steady. "I loved her. I thought we had a good marriage. She seemed caring, attentive. She insisted on preparing my lunch every morning, said she wanted to make sure I ate healthy meals during my busy workday. Did you experience any health issues during your marriage?" "Yes. Starting about 3 months after we got married, I began feeling tired all the time. Stomach pain. Nausea. I thought it was stress from work. My doctor ran some tests, but couldn't find anything specific. The symptoms would get better on weekends when I wasn't eating the lunches she prepared, but I didn't make that connection at the time." "What happened on the day you learned you were being poisoned?" Cameron described receiving my frantic phone call, rushing to the hospital, learning about the arsenic. His voice remained controlled, but I could see his hands gripping the armrests of the witness chair. "When I found out what she'd been doing," he said, "I couldn't believe it. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted completely, had been trying to kill me every single day while acting like she cared about me." The defense attorney's cross-examination was aggressive. He tried to suggest Cameron's symptoms were caused by his high-stress job, by the energy drinks he consumed, by anything except arsenic poisoning. "Isn't it true that you regularly worked 60 to 70 hours per week?" Harrison asked. "Yes, but I'd worked those hours before I met Nadia without getting sick." "Isn't it possible your symptoms were stress-related?" "No. The medical evidence shows I was being poisoned. The arsenic levels don't lie." Harrison tried to shake Cameron's testimony, but my son held firm. He'd been preparing for this moment, and he wasn't going to let Nadia's lawyer twist the truth. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the witness stand with my head held high. I would not be intimidated. I would tell the truth, and I would make sure the jury understood exactly what Nadia had done to my family. Jennifer asked me to describe the morning of the discovery, finding the wrong lunchbox, showing it to David, his urgent reaction. When David told me to take Cameron to the hospital immediately, I knew something was terribly wrong. David doesn't panic. He doesn't exaggerate. If he said my son's life was in danger, I believed him. "Can you describe your relationship with the defendant before this incident?" "I thought she was wonderful," I admitted. "I welcomed her into our family. I treated her like a daughter. She called me Mom. She seemed to love Cameron genuinely. I never suspected she was capable of something like this." "Did the defendant ever express interest in your family's finances?" "Yes. She asked many questions about my business, about Cameron's income, about our properties. At the time, I thought it was natural curiosity. Now I realize she was calculating what she stood to gain from our deaths." The defense attorney tried to paint me as paranoid, as a controlling mother-in-law who never approved of her son's wife. But I didn't take the bait. I simply told the truth. "I loved Nadia," I said firmly. "I wanted her to be part of our family. But the evidence doesn't lie. She tried to kill my son. That's not paranoia. That's fact." The prosecution rested their case after 2 weeks of testimony. The evidence was overwhelming, but Harrison still had one card to play. He called Nadia to the stand. This was risky for the defense. Putting a defendant on the stand always was. But Harrison clearly believed Nadia could convince the jury of her innocence. She walked to the witness stand, looking small and vulnerable. Her voice was soft when she spoke, barely audible. She had to be asked to speak louder. "I loved Cameron," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I would never hurt him. I don't know how that arsenic got into his food. Maybe someone at work was trying to hurt him. Maybe it was contamination from the containers. But it wasn't me. I couldn't have done this." She was convincing, I had to admit. The tears seemed real. The emotion in her voice seemed genuine. If I hadn't known the truth, if I hadn't seen the evidence, I might have believed her myself. Harrison walked her through her version of events. She claimed she'd had no idea Cameron was sick beyond normal work stress. She said the arsenic in her jewelry box must have been planted. She insisted the laptop searches were from research she was doing for a novel she wanted to write. A novel? Jennifer asked skeptically during cross-examination. Yes, a mystery novel. I was researching poisons for the plot. And you never mentioned this novel to anyone? Not your husband? Not your mother-in-law? I was keeping it as a surprise. Jennifer pulled out documents. According to your banking records, you made no purchases related to writing. No laptop specifically for writing. No writing software. No books on novel writing. But you did make several searches for life insurance payout procedures. Can you explain that? Nadia hesitated. I was concerned about our financial future. I wanted to make sure we were protected. Protected from what? Your husband had a good job. His mother has a successful business. What were you protecting against except their deaths? I don't have to explain my internet searches to you. Actually, in a murder trial, you do. The cross-examination continued for hours. Jennifer systematically dismantled every explanation Nadia offered. By the end, Nadia's composure had cracked. Her answers became defensive, sharp. The vulnerable act disappeared, replaced by the cold woman I'd seen at the hospital. After closing arguments, the jury deliberated for 2 days. Cameron and I waited in a private room Jennifer had secured for us. Every minute felt like an hour. What if they didn't believe us? What if Harrison's reasonable doubt strategy worked? What if Nadia walked free? On the afternoon of the second day, we got word. The jury had reached a verdict. We filed back into the courtroom, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Cameron sat beside me, his hand gripping mine so tightly it hurt. But I didn't let go. Whatever happened next, we would face it together. The jury filed in, their faces unreadable. I tried to gauge their expressions, looking for any hint of what they'd decided, but they avoided eye contact with everyone. The judge entered, and we all stood. When we sat back down, the silence in the courtroom was absolute. Every eye was fixed on the jury foreman, a middle-aged woman in a blue cardigan who stood holding a piece of paper. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" the judge asked. "We have, Your Honor. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, how do you find the defendant?" The foreman looked directly at Nadia. "We find the defendant guilty." The courtroom erupted. Cameron let out a breath he'd been holding for 2 days. I felt tears streaming down my face, tears of relief and vindication and grief for everything we'd lost. Nadia showed no emotion. She simply stared straight ahead, her face blank, as if she'd disconnected from reality. The judge banged his gavel for order. The defendant will remain in custody until sentencing, which will be scheduled for 30 days from today. This court is adjourned. Outside the courtroom, Jennifer hugged us both. Justice was served today. She'll face significant prison time. The sentencing guidelines for attempted murder with special circumstances, which include premeditation and financial motive, suggest 25 to 30 years minimum. "She deserves every single year," Cameron said. The media swarmed us as we left the courthouse, but our security team cleared a path. I gave a brief statement to the cameras. Today, justice was served. My son is alive because of a fortunate accident, but this could have ended very differently. The Robinson Foundation will continue to fight for victims of domestic violence and financial abuse. No one should have to go through what our family experienced. The sentencing hearing 30 days later was shorter but no less emotional. Nadia was given the opportunity to speak, but she declined. She sat silently as victim impact statements were read. Cameron spoke about the betrayal, the physical pain, the psychological trauma. She didn't just try to take my life. She tried to take my ability to trust, to love, to feel safe in my own home, but she failed. I'm still here, and I'm stronger because of it. I spoke about watching my son suffer for months, not knowing he was being poisoned, about the terror of that day in the hospital, about the foundation we'd created to help others. The judge listened carefully, then delivered his sentence. Nadia Robinson, also known as Natasha Coleman, you have been found guilty of attempted murder in the first degree. The evidence showed a calculated, premeditated plan to murder your husband for financial gain. You showed no remorse throughout this trial. I hereby sentence you to 28 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections without possibility of parole for 22 years. Nadia was led away in handcuffs. As she passed our table, she looked at Cameron one last time. You were never enough, she said quietly. Neither of you were. All that money, and you still couldn't give me what I really wanted. What did you want? Cameron asked. Power, control. To never be that poor girl again, looking in from the outside. I wanted to be you, not just be with you. And then she was gone, led away to begin serving her sentence. 6 months after the trial, life had found a new rhythm. Cameron had moved into his own place again, but we had dinner together several times a week. He was dating someone new, a woman named Lisa, who was kind and genuine. He was taking it slowly, learning to trust again. The Robinson Foundation was thriving. We'd helped 127 women escape abusive situations, provided legal services for 83 cases, and funded 3 new domestic violence shelters in the Chicago area. I was back at work full-time, focusing on my fragrance company, but with a renewed sense of purpose. The near loss of my son had reminded me what truly mattered in life. One evening, Cameron and I sat on my porch watching the sunset paint the Chicago skyline in shades of orange and pink. It had become our ritual, this quiet time together, a reminder that we'd survived and come through stronger. Do you ever think about her? Cameron asked. Sometimes. I wonder if there was ever any part of her that was real. If any moment between us was genuine. I don't think so, Mom. I think she was always playing a role. The Nadia we knew never existed. Maybe not. But we existed. We still exist. And we're here. Together. Building something good from something terrible. Cameron took my hand. The foundation is your legacy now. More than the business, more than anything else. You turned our worst nightmare into hope for other people. It's our legacy, I corrected. You're just as much a part of it as I am. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, I thought about how close I'd come to losing everything that mattered. How a simple mistake, a switched lunchbox, had saved my son's life. Some might call it luck. I called it grace. A second chance that we hadn't wasted. Nadia had tried to destroy us for money, for power, for the life she thought we had, but what she never understood was that our real strength wasn't in our wealth or our business or our possessions. It was in each other. In the unbreakable bond between a mother and son. In the love that survives betrayal and emerges stronger. She'd failed to kill Cameron, and she'd failed to break us. We were still standing, still fighting, still loving each other, and that was the greatest victory of all. That is Maxine Robinson's story. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? What city? What country? Drop it in the comments below. I love seeing our global community come together over these stories about betrayal, poisoning, and the moment when a mother's instinct saves her child's life. Real question. If you were Maxine, what would you have done? Would you have noticed the white crystals on the lunchbox? Would you have trusted your colleague's warning? Or would you have dismissed it as paranoia? Tell me in the comments. Hit that like button if this story made you feel something. Share it if you know someone who needs to hear this message about trusting your instincts. Someone dealing with a family member whose behavior doesn't add up. Someone who's been ignoring warning signs because they want to believe the best in people. And subscribe for more raw, real stories about family betrayal, attempted murder, con artists who target wealthy families, and what happens when greed destroys everything it touches. Thanks for watching. Sometimes the person cooking your meals is the one trying to kill you. Sometimes A simple mistake can save your life. Sometimes the daughter-in-law you welcomed like family is wearing a mask. And sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to ignore danger, even when it comes from someone you trust. See you in the next video.